Good morning, Sunnyvale. We'll get started in just a few moments. Might be working. Definitely having questions with Facebook yet again. Think we're going. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Little technical difficulties this morning. I'm having some internet issues here at home, but that's the world we live in right now. You never know what the day is going to bring. Just pause for a moment and get started. If you have any questions, if you have resolutions, put them into the chat and we'll hopefully get to them if I can read them. We'll see how things go today. Good morning. Happy New Year. Okay, good morning, Sunnyvale. Welcome to my weekly virtual office hours and Happy New Year. Hopefully you have a good start to the year so far. Don't know what your resolutions are, but it's the beginning of the year, time to take a look at, everything, what you might want to change in your life and what new endeavors you might want to undertake. So welcome. Thanks for being here as usual. This week's artwork is another mural from my holiday travels in Bend, Oregon. So an interesting crow mural. I think I might have shown this before, but definitely it's an interesting sort of design, to say the least, and I think that hopefully we have, with Sunnyvale being so crow-centric to some degree, conceivably have something similar sometime in the future right here in Sunnyvale. But let's go ahead and get started. My name is Larry Klein. I'm mayor for Sunnyvale. Thank you for joining me again this week. This is the 146th installment of my weekly office hours. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, staying dry this week. We've now reached 1,026 days since the March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. Almost 3 years ago, I switched my weekly office hours at Being Seen on Murphy Avenue into this live stream address. And, I'm basically here every week. Enjoy hearing from their mayor each week. But, these weekly addresses allow me to give you some updates, answer some of your questions, and, and just give you some general words of encouragement. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. Most Fridays like today, I follow up this live stream address with in-person meetings at Being Seen downtown. Meet with me, just email me. It's a great way to, if you want to get more involved in the city, if you have a great idea, it's the best way to figure out the best path forward as far as that's concerned. So before I get to what my weekly update, I wanted to, and this is the new year, but I wanted to take a little more time to take stock of 2022. A little bit last week. But as I look back here, lots of challenges from COVID, still part of everyone's daily life, to the crows and being on national news. But, from my standpoint, I've been on council now for over 6 years. And mayor for the last 4. And, I last year I was actually happy to see that some major progress on some of my priorities. We made progress in January last year. We broke ground on Block 3, the old Macy's site, and we've now finished the underground parking. You see the residential and the residential that's on the south end of that block, and the office space that's on the north end of that block, with retail on the bottom of both of them, slowly going up. We have 4 or 5 cranes downtown right now. And then, in early 2022, council actually gave direction to study permanently closing Murphy Avenue to cars, to only make it a pedestrian zone. So, that's moving forward. We've been working on creating affordable housing. So in March, we broke ground on the Block 15 project that's right at Matilda, Iowa, and Charles. But it's 100% affordable, committed 16 million, more than that, but it's on city-owned land. And that related project will have about 90 units for seniors, for veterans, and people that are developmentally disabled. In October, council committed 16 million in housing mitigation funds to 3 new 100% affordable housing projects in Sunnyvale. Downtown, we have a new park and renovated open space this year. So in May, we reopened Fair Oaks Park after its renovation, and as part of our 20-year plan to renovate all of our parks, invest $200 million in upgrading all of our parks here in the city. But then we also added the Magical Bridge Playground, to that, the all access, all abilities. We opened up in July, we opened up Mwekma Park. And then, of course, there's lots of other things going on. We're close to finishing phase 1 of our Civic Center modernization. So in September, we opened up the addition onto public safety. So that's the new emergency operations center. And then the new net zero LEED Platinum building is close to completion. Staff will be moving in March. A personal priority for me has been active transportation, and I do lots of advocating with different organizations and trying to figure out ways that our city can pay for, Vision Zero and getting additional safe routes for bikes, for peds throughout our city. In September, we accepted County Measure B funds and $1 million in voluntary contributions from Google to go towards basically an East Channel bike ped trail. So, working with Valley Water and advocating with them. So that will go from the Bay Trail in the north all the way to Homestead Avenue. And then in September, council chose the Sunnyvale Avenue grade separation to only be bike ped going underneath the Avenue. We brought back bird scooter share program earlier this year. And in December, actually, we finally received confirmation from Congressman Khan's office that we have a community project funding for the Stevens Creek Trail extension from Remington Avenue to Fremont Avenue. So lots going on as far as that's concerned. One of my personal favorites, of course, is art. I really believe, art nourishes the soul. It improves your day when you see it. Spring, we had, which was a big success, and we'll kick that off again here in 2023. And then in September, City Line Sunnyvale unveiled 2 new pieces along McKinley Avenue, and lots more art to come in 2023. So, from my standpoint, it's great to be, is well run, that is the #4 safest city in the nation. A few weeks ago, we were ranked the happiest city in the nation. And statistics are kind of depending upon where what values, what data they're evaluating, and how they cross correlate that. But standpoint to see, the residents. To your personally, I was chosen as a Bloomberg Harvard mayor, one of 40 mayors from around the world to get that commendation. And, that's opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Have lots of things that we're at Harvard to improve our processes, do innovation projects. And you'll hear more about that later this year. We have fantastic residents, and I'm really proud that it's a well-run city and we have great staff. So anyway, that's a quick overview of 2022. Looking forward to 2023. Let's go ahead and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. The last weeks have been a little slow because of the holidays. Last Thursday, President Biden signed the 4,000 plus page $1.7 trillion omnibus until September of 2023. But, two important parts of the bill, for Sunnyvale at least, was the community project funding for California District 17. So thanks to Congressman Khanna for helping Sunnyvale. And that's two different projects, one of which I already mentioned, which was, of course, the Stevens Creek Trail extension. So that's $3 million towards that. Towards completing the final design and implementation of that trail. And it's a really important portion of our active transportation network here in Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Los Altos, Cupertino. It's how you get, north, south, in kind of the south, in the western portion of the county. And then there was also $1.5 million that went to Sunnyvale Community Services for a new roof and solar energy system. And so that makes sure that roof is sound for decades, for their new building. But it also actually is really good because it's the environmental benefit of adding solar as far as that's concerned. I don't know who's calling me, but we'll continue. Last weekend, of course, was the beginning of the new year. So I hope everyone had a safe holiday. If you have any special resolutions, add them to the comments. I'll always be happy to hear. And then for the last few weeks, so for over a month now almost, we've been hearing about the D3 election because it ended up as a 1-vote lead, and then it went through a recount. So at first it ended up with a 1-vote win at the 30 days after the election at the beginning of December, and then they asked for recounts and reevaluation, and so ballots were reevaluated, and a few. 3 is the south central portion of Sunnyvale. And so last Tuesday morning, or this actually just a few days ago, well, it's Tuesday morning of this week, there was a tiebreaker, and it was at City Hall, it was in the council chambers, it was attended by about 50 residents, a mixture of supporters on both sides. And shown on Zoom if you want to go watch it. But, both candidates, Murli Srinivasan and Justin Wang, put their names on a piece of paper, put them in envelopes, put the envelopes in a blue bag, and then each of them had a chance to shake the bag. And finally, the city clerk drew a name, and the final name, of course, was Murli Srinivasan. So it was definitely one for the history books as far as Sunnyvale is concerned, a tie election. That hasn't happened in our history, although it has happened elsewhere, even during this election cycle elsewhere in the Bay Area. Richmond went through a similar sort of thing. And then Tuesday evening, we had a lot of ceremony, a council meeting, but a lot of ceremony at the end of the day. It was a packed council chambers, but we said goodbye to the outgoing council members. So former Mayor Glenn Hendricks, former Vice Mayor Gustav Larson have both been on council for 9 years. And, they've served Sunnyvale, they served the region. Glenn was VTA chair during the 2021 mass shooting at the rail yard for VTA. And so he, has went through a lot as far as his time on serving our city, as well as serving, regionally. We also said goodbye to Tony. So had served 12 years on council February to fill, he was served 8 years on council previously, 4 of which was as mayor. And so we appointed him last February to fill that empty seat on council when one of our council members resigned. And so going through that process of saying goodbye to them, we had lots of local dignitaries who joined us to celebrate, our new assembly member, Evan Lowe, County Supervisor Otto Lee, Cindy Chavez, County Assessor and former mayor, of course, Larry Stone. And then, we had school board members and mayors and council members from Mountain View, Cupertino, Santa Clara. We swore in. So after we had that kind of passing of the baton, we then swore in our new district council members. So District 1, the southwest portion, Linda Sell. District 3, Merle Srinivasan, and District 5, which is the north end of Sunnyvale. Well, it's the area between 101 and the Caltrain tracks. Swore all those in. They had, they were sworn in. Their families were there. It was actually very touching from that standpoint. Each of them is already on, different nonprofit boards, Sunnyvale, Leadership Sunnyvale, the Historical Society, Sunnyvale Community Services. So lots of different, connections within the city. That's actually really good from that standpoint. Moving to districts, while we had to move faster because we got sued. We'd already made that decision back in September of 2018. It really allows us to achieve the most diverse city council in Sunnyvale's history. So, I was happy to have that diversity up there on council, that diversity of backgrounds and, in ages and, different life experiences, which I think will make for a better council. It's looks like it'll be a really great team in 2023. And then, we chose our new vice mayor that evening. So we did do a little bit of work. We chose our new vice mayor, which is Councilmember Dean from District 6. So he's our new vice mayor. And then we also chose our intergovernmental responsibilities and where we were seated on the dais. So we finished around 11 p.m., a little bit longer than what I was hoping, but it was a lot of, happy residents and a lot of people there to thank, people for their service, so council members for their service to the city, to the region, and then, welcoming those new council. So it was good. Was good from that standpoint. Wednesday and Thursday were really stormy days. We definitely need the rain, but lots of flood and power outages around the Bay Area. Wednesday, Governor Newsom proclaimed a state of emergency, and it's kind of an early state of emergency throughout California to support the upcoming and the ongoing response to the winter storms. And that those flooding and power outages did come to pass, and some areas are still recovering. Seeing some of the photos from like Capitola or the East Bay of where things, or even San Francisco, to see parts of the financial district completely underwater is just shocking to see. But we more heavy rains coming on Monday and Tuesday, so definitely stay safe, stay dry as much as you can. And then, of course, later today, Governor Newsom will be sworn in for his second term as governor. So, if you want to watch that online, I do know it's going to be televised. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. The COVID numbers across the nation have stabilized. Hospitalizations are relatively stable too. We've done fairly well. Initially we were having a large increase in hospitalizations because of cold and RSV and flu, but things have done fairly well. We'll see how things go from people being away for the holidays. From a national standpoint, we've had over 101 million cases at this point. That increased by about 400,000 in the past week. We've had 225 million vaccinated, about 2/3 with at least one shot. 78% of adults are fully vaccinated. And, as far as deaths, we're still having people pass away with COVID, another 3,000 last week. So we're up to 1,091,000 people that have passed away with COVID. And from California, we've seen that continue to trend downward. We've now had, 10,934,000 positive cases. So we'll pass 11 million cases probably in the next week. And we continue to have, a slight decrease in the average of new cases. So we're at 6,200 cases a day now in California. That's down from 6,800, 7,400, 8,600 the previous few weeks. So we keep trending down there, although we're now up to a 12% average COVID test case positivity rate. So that has, while we're having fewer people get tested, we are seeing tested are showing positive with COVID. So, COVID is still out there. We've had another 250 deaths within California. So now we've had over 98,000 people pass away with COVID. And then from a county standpoint, we passed a cumulative case count of 465,000 cases. That's up only about 2,000 last week. We've had another 10 deaths, so we're at 2,568 deaths for the county. We're very good. More than 95% of our adults are fully vaccinated. Over 70% of those that are eligible for the booster received it. But at the county level, talking to our county supervisors, talking to county health, for testing, you can go to scfreetest.org. You can order additional tests from the federal government, and I received mine a few weeks ago at covidtests.gov. As far as getting vaccinated, you can go to scfreevax.org. And, locally, the Mayview Health Center at the Columbia Neighborhood Center is having free COVID shots Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So you can go by there also. Let me announce some of the upcoming events. Tomorrow, Saturday, there'll be a volunteer bike event at the Sunnyvale Library from 11:45 to 2 p.m. It'll be teaching people what to look at, the quick ABC quick check when they get on their bike, but there'll also be a professional bike mechanic there to give you advice and help out with, conceivably small repairs. And then tomorrow at 1 p.m. At Busher Middle School in Santa Clara, Rocano will be having a town hall, and it's a town hall along with Assemblymember Evan Lowe. So that's happening at 1 p.m. tomorrow. And then on Sunday, there'll be a 2.5-hour personal emergency preparedness class. So if we talked about disasters over the last few weeks, you can sign up for that. I think it's currently waitlisted, but on Saturday, January 28th, there'll be a Spanish version, and then there'll be another English version on Thursday, February 16th. So consider signing up for one of those. And then on Sunday, there'll be a talk at the library from 3 to 4 on low waste living with the zero waste chef. So, it's talking about how to figure out how to reduce the amount of waste that you're creating. And then our Sunnyvale Sustainability Speaker Series will come back at the end of January. So on Wednesday, January 25th from 7 to 8:30 p.m., and that will be online. Dr. Tulser will talk, is a crop scientist and food safety consultant, and she'll share her knowledge on the farm sector and the agricultural industry. So it'll get busier and busier this month as far as that's concerned. From a council standpoint, there are a lot of meetings, council meetings in January. So, we'll have another meeting next week, January 10th. It'll be the official swearing in ceremony of Vice Mayor Dean. And then we'll also be honoring our past Vice Mayor, Alyssa Cisneros, as she just finished her 1 year as Vice Mayor. And then we have several other things on the agenda. We'll add zoning amendment requests regarding Block 20 at the corner of Matilda and Olive to allow additional residential and office space. We'll also look at approving a preferred concept for the community center grounds renovation project. So that's been ongoing, that community outreach. The following Tuesday, January 17th, we'll have an online Moffett Park specific plan workshop. So this is talking about community benefits. So this is one of our last meetings as far as oh no, so that's not community benefits. That's the EIR. Sorry. Yeah. So the 17th is the Moffett Park specific plan workshop to talk about the EIR. And then on Tuesday, January 24th, we'll have a Nexus study. So that's the following Tuesday. Have an Nexus study to talk about housing impact fees, and we'll also approve our community and neighborhood grant proposal. So lots of things going on. On Thursday, January 26th, there's our all-day meeting. Council has 3 all-day meetings every year. It's our strategic session. So in January, we have our strategic session. In February, we have our study issue and budget workshop. And then we have a final budget meeting in May. So that's the first of our all 3-day meetings. And the strategic session talks about, we get a good overview. If you want to get a great overview of what the city's doing and all the different things, that's what the first half of that day is. And then we talk about conceivably, changing some of the strategic priorities from a city standpoint. So the residents are allowed to attend either in person or via Zoom or YouTube. And then on the last Tuesday of the evening of the month, Tuesday, January 3rd, that's where we'll have the Moffett Park specific plan community benefits workshop. And I think that will be hybrid also. So lots of things coming up this month from a council. We have a meeting, at least one meeting every week. And so I think we have, 5 council meetings this month. So lots going on for council. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have a question, add it to the chat and I might be able to see it. But I have several early questions. Allison asked, yesterday at the Courtyard station, we were almost out of sand and sandbags. Has it been restocked? And so, yes, staff has been monitoring very closely to make sure that there are sand and sandbags there, especially during this rainy season. But sandbags are there year round. Definitely, they're getting used a lot more right now. But staff is on top of that and monitoring that situation, especially during this rainy season that we're in right now. Tina asked, "I'm writing to address the issue of crows in downtown. I'm a resident downtown who gets woken up by the incessant cause every morning starting at 5 a.m. As a shift worker who often has to work late, this constant disruption is starting to affect my health. I'm writing to ask the city for assistance." So the city has restarted the use of green lasers to kind of harass the crows away from downtown. Doesn't happen, it's not 100%. But it does kind of help disperse them to some degree so that they're not all flocking in one location. Council also improves spray washing the sidewalks and the streets downtown to help reduce the health hazards that are related to that. But it's not an easy sort of thing. Looking at other possible solutions. Definitely hanging effigies does seem to help, but it's dealing with a migratory bird that we're very limited on what we can actually deal with. May asked, the city should look at the issue on what to do when votes are tied in an election so that there can be better process than randomness of drawing a name. Getting the same number of votes does not mean that the candidates are equal. So, I hope it never happens again that we have a tie. But, if candidates get the same number of votes from those residents that are voting, there isn't much we can do except draw a name. It is, and it's what, I'd say most cities do. You could do ranked choice voting, but if you only had two people and you end up with a tie, the same result. And so you do have concept of drawing a name by lot is what other cities do. It's also what council does if we're tied on the appointment of two commission members, which I actually lost out on a coin flip back in 2003 when I applied for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advocacy Commission. So at that point, you know, they only had 6 council members on the dais that evening, and I ended up losing. So it was 3-3. I ended up losing and not being appointed because of that coin flip. So and a year later, ended up applying to the Planning Commission and getting on that. So from that standpoint, you know, it's a tried and true measure. You know, it's fair, as fair as it can be. You know, each candidate has a 50% chance of winning, and yes, it is kind of dealing with the chance of the hand of fate, but that's in this case the hand of the city clerk, who is the hand of fate. But ultimately, you know, it's exactly what we have to do. You know, we can't do another election. We could run another special election, which would have cost, to kick off another election, I think is on the order of a few $100,000 to do the same votes. And if the exact same group of people voted and they voted exactly the same way, you would have ended up with the same problem. Jeff asked, why did it take so long to schedule the tiebreaker for District 1? For District 1, you know, the city clerk couldn't do anything until we received the official certification of election results from the Santa Clara County Register of Voters, and he didn't receive it until last Tuesday. And because of holidays and closed City Hall, and because of noticing issues, you have to notice it as a normal meeting. It took basically until this Tuesday, because city offices were closed on Friday and Monday, so we actually did it this Tuesday morning, as I was talking about previously. Garrick asked, it's hard to trust COVID numbers, as I believe many are self-testing at home and not reporting things. Does Sunnyvale or Santa Clara County test wastewater or otherwise? So yes, I don't talk much about all the COVID data. There's actually a great county dashboard on all the different COVID data, but Santa Clara County Health does monitor the wastewater for San Jose, for Palo Alto, for Sunnyvale, and Gilroy. So, and those numbers have ticked upwards in the last few months, but we've seen a similar sort of thing with COVID. It's pretty stable. You know, looking at the county dashboard, it's that sewer shed data, where they're measuring. They still say the numbers are relatively high, but luckily hospitalizations are relatively stable. Vales have mainly been on the lower end of that. So if you take a look at those 4 graphs, Gilroy and Sunnyvale seem to be relatively low. Definitely San Jose and Palo Alto have been a lot higher. So it is, it gives you some view of what's happening, not a perfect vision of exactly what's happening within your city. But, we know that a lot of people are testing at home and conceivably not even seeing a doctor showing that they're COVID positive. Hoy asked previously, is Sunnyvale's minimum wage the highest in the county or California? And so, no, it's not, but Sunnyvale's minimum wage went up on January 1st to $17.95. Mountain View's went to $18.15. Palo Alto's is now $17.25, and Cupertino's is $17.20. And from a state standpoint, the state went from $15 to $15.50. So not the highest, definitely not the highest in the nation or even California. There are other cities, Emeryville, which is higher. But ultimately, it's important for those that are making minimum wage to try to have a workable living, but a living wage is definitely not $17 an hour. And most of the small businesses, because of a lack of good employees, are actually paying a lot more than the minimum wage as it currently stands. Let me see if I can see any of the questions. What are my resolutions? Let's see. No, I don't see any other comments. Okay, that's good. So let me go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again at the first meeting of the year. We still are in uncertain times and new issues come up all the time. But, I want you all to know that no matter what challenges we face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and our residents and, how we responded to each challenge over the last few years. I'm thankful to everyone who helps out in Sunnyvale, showing their generosity, showing their friendliness, showing their kindness. Your actions and your attitude really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. Stay dry. Take care. Bye.